that spoke tonight, and I can't speak on roads or easements or fixing anything like that, but they alluded that bus stop is very dangerous for the kids. I mean, I think that's a pretty easy move, is to move that bus stop, right?
It is a busy intersection, and we have a crossing guard out there. You know, I've talked to Mr. Barnes previously about some options to move that stop, especially once we widen the road, because we're gonna lose our part of the property. So we will have to find an alternative location, and we could start that process now.
But you could move the bus stop to where the kids get the bus.
We can move it to where they get.
You can move them any of the bus stops, right? You
Correct.
said where the kids waiting for the bus, they're like running around and it's a zoo. Like, you can move the bus stop to anywhere, that's an easy thing to do, right?
Correct, yeah.
I think you have some considerations to move a bus stop, and then you can bring a proposal to the board for their approval.
Right.
Any other questions for Gordon?
Frank Volcano, by the way, his name appears on this agenda. He will join us next week to give his sports update. Yes.
Right, moving on, recognition.
We have had a couple of recognition items submitted, really special. Mackenzie Booman and Bethany West, each after 1.5 years of intense training, have received their credentials as facilitators in language essentials of teaching, reading, and spelling. It's a really big deal for us, so that's, congratulations and hats off to them. Cecil Intermediate School band teacher, Dina Grandstaff. She's among the quarterfinalists announced for the 2023 Music Educator Award presented by the Recording Academy and Grammy Museum. So we were kind of told not to share that information until they released it publicly, and finally we were able to share that with you. We'll stay tuned, and hopefully we can give you information that indicates maybe she was selected, and if so, she would be given a free trip to the Grammys and walk the red carpet and receive her recognition. So really special stuff. And you could read the rest of the information there. It's really exciting.
Next board meeting, we'll look for approval on board minutes from our regular board meeting in May, branding committee, budget and finance, curriculum, building and grounds, and our agenda meeting. Moving on to financial approvals. At the voting meeting, we will be looking at authorizing the Director of Business and Finance to approve the payment of bills and accept all those responsible for bids during the summer. That's Mr. Price, will be our representative. We'll be looking to approve the wage tax reports, bills for ratification and approval, treasurer's report, and budgetary transfers. Are there any questions or comments on any of those items?
Okay, so under my report, the first item, Ms. Mansman pretty well covered the operating budget. We'll have that there for your approval for next week, as well as the tax resolution item, the homestead farmstead exclusion resolution. Then we have the personnel and substitute list for your approval. The personnel sheets, still lots of interviews for lots of vacant positions. I think Mr. McCullough said like 14 open, and there have been lots of interviews going on, and we'll have those empty slots filled in for you for next week. The athletic bids, as presented, they're all in.
The 128th Century Sports Line, so that's for uniforms and stuff.
Typically, yeah. The intermediate Unit 1 annual services to non-public students, we have that presented to you for your approval each year, as well as the fundraisers, the multitude of fundraisers you see there.
That's the most I've ever seen.
I think there were 40.
More than I've ever seen.
Good for them, and we look to achieve their goals. If indeed that gets approved. And then we have a number of contracts and agreements, just a lot of renewals. Not right out offhand seeing anything new except maybe the newsletter agreement that was increased over what was already approved. And the next item, disposal of property, a couple of buses, which we do every year as we cycle new ones in. And the purchase of cafeteria equipment. I don't know if you care to speak more about that, but.
We have, sir, I reported a few board meetings ago that we're anticipating a surplus in cafeteria. There's strict rules on what you can do with surplus in the cafeteria, and you're not allowed to have a surplus. You are allowed to replenish equipment. And so we're waiting for final guidance on what we can do with surplus. We know we need to do certain pieces of equipment, so we went ahead and bid those out.
This next item is facility usage for board approval. And typically, we don't have the board approve the facility usage, but in this case, it's a standalone contract for the use of our swimming pool. For years, yes. Next item is adoption of textbook, and that textbook is either floated around, it's over there on the credenza, yeah, for your review.
Are we sure we have the right one this time?
Yes, yeah, Grace was
Yeah,
very
good
good.
choice.
Yeah, especially with Grace.
Yeah, she put it there herself, and we reviewed it, actually had access to it at the curriculum committee meeting the other night. In addition, the change order for the Fuller Manor roof replacement, there's credit of $2,000, which Mr. Moore shared with us. Another item for disposal of property, this is recycling of computer equipment under policy 706.1. And then we have a student stipulated adjudication for your approval, discussed in executive session.
So all those computers are all being replaced by new ones, right?
Yes.
Is that typical? That seemed like, I mean, it was pages,
Yeah.
like, I'm like, what did we do? Did we find something in the attic that we hadn't addressed, or what's going on?
Well, you need to know that a lot of times what happens is our tech department is so resourceful, they tear apart those computers as they age out, and we can still use some of the old parts, right? So there's an abundance of them that get cycled in and out, but we keep the valuable parts and rebuild and replace and have. Utilization of power aid funds, we have here for your approval. We'll ask you to approve your expenditure of $10,596.96 to purchase a new wrestling mat. It's a one-time expenditure for that project. The next item is temporary provision of instruction resolution. And what this is doing is, we've done this before in the midst of the pandemic emergency status in the state of Pennsylvania. It gives the superintendent the authority not to have to wait for a board meeting should we suddenly experience a spike in numbers where there needs to be a programmatic change. I can do that outside of the actual board meeting. We could do retroactive approval, and certainly, not take those kinds of actions on my own without at least informing the board, but it allows us to do so without formal board action immediately. And the next item, we've done this before as well, each year since the pandemic, the emergency instructional time template. It's a template created by the Department of Education, which includes a schedule should we have to revert back to hybrid and remote. Certainly we don't want to have to do that, but this would provide us with a plan should we be in a situation where we have to.
Can I ask a question about the temporary provision of instruction resolution?
Yeah.
So I understand that it was put in place due to COVID. Has it historically been kind of like cycled through where you've been given the authority to do that and it's always been approved, and why are we potentially approving again? Do we think we're gonna have a flare-up and we're just being cautious? Like, where's this coming from?
In my experience, I mean, this is school code related, but in my experience, we've not done this before the COVID emergency. And we are not, believe it or not, we are still in emergency status for the COVID pandemic. So that's why we continue to ask you to go ahead and approve it, just in case numbers spike to the point where we have to make changes.
And is it the state that then is deeming that we're still in emergency?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions about that? The next item is new stadium scoreboard and carpet contracts. We'll ask you to accept those bids. Next item is, Mr. Chambers has feverishly, throughout the course of the year and the years prior, kept up almost daily, probably even on weekends, and I know he does it in his sleep too, present to you the enrollment numbers and what's going on, and projections for class size and what have you. Well, we're at the point now where there's a reality at Weilandville And we know we need a new building out there pretty soon, and we've already begun talking about the design phase and the financing of that project, but it can't wait until we have that project completed for us to create more space for incoming students. Rather than have large class sizes and problems with quality of instruction, we are proposing to the board to consider the purchase of a portable classroom using ESSER grant fund monies. So we're actually able to find one at this cost, 130. Well, we say not to exceed 130,000. The actual unit is 121,000. But when we look at permitting fees and all the installation and wiring the electrical components and the utilities, we believe by asking you to approve not to exceed 130,000, we'll still be under that.
And this provides 2 classrooms.
It's a double, yeah, it'll be 2 classrooms, two trailers, it's 1 unit, 2 trailers, double wide. Very necessary, and I think you found throughout searches throughout the country, this one company is able to assure us that it could be on site, it will be on site, and up and running and ready to go for the start of school.
Yes.
This next item is for your approval at the high school, Best Buddies Club. And right now they have what's called the SEC Club, and the SEC Club really began in the interest of special needs students and incorporating them into the community with activities and what have you. Well, the Best Buddies Club is kind of like a transition from the SEC Club. It generalizes greater attendance with not only special needs kids, but regular, general population people as well. So it also has a connection with Special Olympics, and we ask you to approve it here in June rather than the beginning of the school year, because if indeed you do approve it in June, there are some applications the new club can complete to be involved in and participate in Special Olympics. So that's that program. Next item is, it's under survey by policy. Anytime we have a survey administered in the district for any reason, the board has an opportunity to see it and approve it or say no. But this is specific to a doctoral student at Robert Morris University who wants to do some studying about the effects of phys ed, and there's a schedule there for your review. So she'll have a post-survey and a pre-survey and a post-survey, and she'll compare the results of her curriculum she's going to.
Is it going to be at all the elementary schools, or?
At this time, it's at the elementary level, but at this time, she's scheduled to be in Borla Manor, and then may branch out to South Central, but we allowed it to be at the elementary level, so that if it has to go to other buildings, it could grow into that, but it'll start at Borla Manor. Next item, we've had some powerful storms around here, and the last one that caused major damage in the region, it touched us as well. And we had some goalposts and fences. And, I'm sorry? I did skip donation. So I'll go back to that then. 6.23 donation.